Assassin's Creed Revelations, the final and what many consider to be the weakest entry in the Ezio trilogy. It was released on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC in November and December of 2011. An upscale version was included as part of the Ezio collection, released on Xbox One and PlayStation 4 in November 2016 and on the Switch in February 2022. While development was still secretly continuing in the next doubled entry, the series producer Jean-Francois Bovin released a statement that there would be no main Assassin's Creed game released in 2011. Instead, an entry for the Nintendo DS was announced at E3 2010 called Assassin's Creed Lost Legacy, which was to focus on Ezio travelling to Masyaf to try and discover the origins of the Assassin's Order. The game was quietly cancelled and never saw the light of day. Despite this statement, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot had different ideas. As mentioned in the AC Brotherhood video, after the release of AC2, Ubisoft introduced a mandate that many of their franchises would have yearly releases, and Assassin's Creed was no different. The core elements planned for the now cancelled DS game, Assassin's Creed Revelations was born and turned around in a short space of time. Teasers were released hinting at the involvement of the protagonist for the first game, Altair, and the game was officially revealed at E3 2011. Similar to the setting outlined for the AC Lost Legacy game, Revelations continues the adventures of a much older Ezio Auditore da Firenze as he travels to Masyaf and Constantinople to discover the secrets left behind by Altair in order to gain a better understanding of the roots of his people. As mentioned at the beginning, Revelations has been described by many as the worst entry in the Ezio trilogy and one of the most polarising games in the series amongst fans. The game has been commended for wrapping up the stories of both Ezio and Altair, as well as moving the setting from Italy in the previous two games to Constantinople, making it feel fresher. A lot of people felt though that the game didn't provide enough new gameplay elements, which made it feel too similar to the last two games, and the short development time impacted the game's quality. Just like my previous videos, I've opted to play the Xbox 360 version of the game on my Xbox One S to be able to appreciate the original release of the game. As always, just a warning that this section is going to contain spoilers, so if you haven't played the game yet and want to, feel free to skip to the next section of the video, timestamps below. The story picks up in the modern day, exactly where Brotherhood left off. Desmond has fallen into a coma after touching the Apple of Eden, an artefact created by an ancient race to control humanity, which allowed one of this race called Juno to take control of Desmond and make him stab one of his team, Lucy Stillman. To keep Desmond alive, he is placed in the Animus where his vital signs can be monitored. He wakes up in what is called the Black Room, a safe room within the Animus which was Gridgel's testing program for the device. Shortly after, Desmond encounters the virtual embodiment of the infamous Subject 16, Clay Kazmarek, who was put through the Animus project by Abstergo prior to Desmond, but died due to the overuse of the device which caused him to lose all sensoriality and killed himself. Clay reveals to Desmond that in order for him to wake up from his coma, he will need to continue reliving the memories of Ezio to find what's called a sync nexus, something that will be achieved when Desmond has reached a major endpoint in Ezio's life. Desmond rejoins Ezio, who is now in Masyaf in search of a fabled secret library created by Altair, and is said to be located underneath the old assassin stronghold. Once there, he encounters a large number of Templars led by a man called Leandros. The numbers are too much for Ezio and he is taken captive. Leandros tries to have Ezio executed, but he is able to escape. While doing so, Ezio comes across the entrance to the library but discovers that 5 keys are required to open it, and the Templars already have one of them. Ezio tracks down and pursues a fleeing Leandros to a nearby village, where he is able to assassinate him and take a book that was in his possession in hopes that it will lead him to the already obtained key as well as the remaining 4. Ezio next travels to Constantinople where he is introduced to Yusuf Tazim, the leader of the local Assassin's Brotherhood. Shortly after, Ezio goes after the first key, which is located in an old trading post set up by Niccolo Polo but is now a bookstore run by a fellow Italian, Sofia Sartor. Ezio finds a secret entrance to a cistern in the back of the shop. Making his way through it, he eventually finds the key along with a book and map that will assist him with uncovering the locations of the remaining undiscovered keys once decrypted, which Sofia is happy to help with. While waiting for Sofia to decipher the next location, Ezio is made aware that there's going to be an attempt on the life of the Ottoman prince. Disguising himself as a minstrel from Italy, Ezio is able to infiltrate the palace and save the Prince Suleiman, who he has already met on his way to Constantinople. Suleiman believes that the assassination attempt was arranged by Tariq Baletti, the captain of the Janissaries, who are the soldiers of the Ottoman Empire, and after Ezio witnesses Tariq meeting with the former heir to the throne, Suleiman requests that he is taken care of. Upon doing so, Tariq reveals to Ezio that he wasn't involved in the assassination, but had a plan to gain the trust of those who were and take them out himself. With his dying breath, he asks Ezio to complete the task. Before doing so, however, with Sofia's help, Ezio gathers the remaining keys in Constantinople. Each key is encoded with Altair's memories, which allow Ezio to relive key moments of his life. The first memory takes place prior to the events of the first game, where Altair saves Masyaf and his mentor Al-Mulim from the group who have turned their back on the Assassin's Brotherhood. Next memory fast forward to immediately after Altair defeats Al-Mulim due to him trying to use the Apple of Eden to bend everyone to his will. To ensure that Al-Mulim doesn't return from the dead, Ezio decides he's going to burn his body on a pyre, which is not the typical assassin's way. One of Altair's brothers, Abbas, takes offence to this and tries to take control of the apple, which almost kills him before Altair is able to save him. Key moves forward 37 years where Abbas is taken over the assassins while Altair was on a mission. Altair confronts Abbas where it is revealed that he ordered the execution of Altair's son, Seth. Understandably angered by this, Altair goes to use the apple, which results in the unfortunate death of his wife Maria. Altair manages to escape Masyaf with the assistance of his other son, Dirim. Final key found in Constantinople shows Altair returning to Masyaf after 19 years, now in his 80s. With the help of fellow assassins who believe that Abbas has gone mad, Altair is able to make his way to the castle and confront him. With the help of his new invention, the hidden gun, Altair takes Abbas out. Collecting these 4 keys, Ezio travels to Cappadocia to collect the final one, as well as taking out the target requested by Tariq, Manuel Palagolis. Once he has reached the destination, his actions lead to destroying the local armory, which creates a massive fire and distraction. Chaos, Ezio finds and chases down Manuel where he takes him out and is able to retrieve the last key. Just as he does this, Prince Ahmet, Suleiman's uncle, appears and reveals himself to be the leader of the local Templars. He orders Ezio to hand the keys over to him, which he refuses. Ahmet leaves with the ultimatum that Ezio better hand over the keys or something unpleasant will happen to Sofia. Starts to travel back to Constantinople, but on the way has time to delve into Altair's memory stored in the 5th key. It shows Altair bidding farewell to Niccolo and Maffeo Polo, who are travelling to Constantinople to set a base for the assassins there. Before they go, Altair gives them his codex as well as the keys to be kept safe and hidden. Once back in Constantinople, Ezio rushes to Sofia's bookshop where he sadly finds the body of Yusuf, with a piece of paper being held in place by a knife that was used to kill him. To save Sofia, Ezio hands the keys over to Ahmet, who motions to Sofia about to be thrown from a nearby tower. Ezio rushes to the top only to find this was a decoy and she's been hung from a tree further away. Using his parachute, Ezio is able to get to Sofia in time and cut her down. Ezio spots Ahmet fleeing Constantinople on a carriage and gives chase. He catches up to him and both of them end up falling off the side of a cliff. They fight while plummeting to their doom, but Ezio saves them both by utilising his parachute again. He steals the keys back from Ahmet and decides to spare him after promising Suleiman he would do so. Shortly after, they are approached by the new Sultan, Selim, Ahmet's brother, who doesn't employ the same level of mercy and pushes him off a nearby cliff to meet his fate. Ezio and Sofia then continue on to Masyaf. Between certain sequences, Desmond has returned to the Black Room and his interactions with Clay, who did float the idea of leaving the animus within Desmond until he finds a new body, but the idea was swiftly rejected. On this occasion of returning to the Black Room, it appears that it has been deleted. To save Desmond, Clay sacrificed himself by pushing Desmond back into the portal to allow him to finish Ezio's story. Back in Masyaf, Ezio returns to the door of the library and enters the keys he's gathered. Within the library, the remains of Altair are discovered, with one final key in memory. This one shows Altair disbanding the assassins from Masyaf and saying farewell to his son before locking himself in the library with the apple. Ezio finds the apple, but decides it's best left where it is and lays down his arms as he feels he's reached the end of his time as an assassin. At this point, the apple activates and Ezio speaks directly to Desmond to ask him to use the messages discovered throughout Ezio's life for the greater good. This is the sync nexus point that Desmond was working towards, and before he wakes back up in the real world, he encounters another precursor race in Jupiter. He reveals to Ezio the catastrophic fate that befell the planet previously and shows where the Grand Temple is that Desmond must go to if he has any chance of stopping it happening again. Desmond then finally awakens from his coma in the back of a van. There he is greeted by Sean, Rebecca and his father, William Miles, who was the disembodied voice heard throughout the time Desmond was in the coma. The van stops just outside a cave leading to the temple. There the credits roll. I think it's safe to say that gameplay wise, Revelations hasn't changed much since the last 2 entries, and in some areas feels slightly stripped back. Movement and traversal feel the same. The one new fun addition to aid Ezio get around the city is the hook blade. It can be used when climbing buildings, which allows Ezio to reach higher places, and actually makes climbing a building feel quicker and smoother, especially when reaching the top. I feel this was added to emphasise that Ezio is no longer a young man, so can't just jump up the side of a building like he used to. Ziplines can also be found around the city, which connect rooftops. Ezio can use his new hook blade on them and get around the city quicker. Tunnels also return, which can be used quickly to transport to other parts of the city. The other new major feature introduced in Revelations is bomb crafting. These are split into 3 types: lethal, tactical and diversion. To craft these, Ezio will require materials which can be gathered from chests found throughout the world, as well as looting enemies for them. Once he has acquired ingredients, he can visit crafting stations which are also scattered throughout Constantinople. The Borgia towers from Brotherhood return in the form of assassins' dens. These work the same way, where they consist of towers that have been taken over by Templars, and the only way to get them back is to take out the captain in control, but instead of destroying the towers, Ezio climbs to the top and lights the flame to signify his back under assassin control. It's fairly simple to take down the controlling captains, but these can be frustrating again, where they manage to escape and won't appear until a later point. I also found that the new gunners, which are stationed within locations on the side of the buildings, are annoying as they seem to be very precise with their shots and they can only be taken out with a ranged weapon. Once the tower is back under control, if Ezio's notoriety in the area gets too high, the Templars will launch an attack and try and take it over again. Once this occurs, the new Den Defence minigame occurs, which is essentially a tower defence style mode. In this minigame, Ezio will have a certain number of points to spend on different types of defences, such as crossbow wielding assassin barricades, to try and hold these attackers back. These defences can be placed on the rooftops and streets, and by taking out some of the enemies, more points are gained and can be used for defences. Also, once the towers are back in the assassin's hands, shops are unlocked which Ezio can renovate to start earning an income, just like in Brotherhood. There aren't quite as many shops this time around, with these limited to weapon shops, medicine shops, and now also a bookstore. Certain historical locations can also be bought to raise income, such as Glatha Tower. An annoying aspect I found of buying shops and Revelations is that Ezio's notoriety will rise each time a new one is bought. Speaking of notoriety, it returns in Revelations and is similar to the last two games, though it does seem to raise quicker for killing enemies and the aforementioned renovating of stores. To lower notoriety, posters have been removed, leaving just the bribing of heralds and taking out officials. The recruiting of assassins returns in Revelations, but has been slightly expanded upon. The maximum level a recruit can reach has been increased to 15, and a certain number of these recruits can be placed in charge of a claimed den, which will stop an attempt from the Templars trying to attack it. Once a recruit reaches level 15, they are promoted to Master Assassin. The recruits can also again be sent out on missions across the world to earn experience and gain access to better skills and weapons. Completing the missions will decrease the Templar presence in that area, and once below a certain level, the recruits can launch an attack to take control of that area for the assassins. Ezio's Eagle Vision has been updated for Revelations. Not only will it highlight targets to Ezio, it can be used to see routes taken by guards to allow them a stealthy approach if wished, or to track them down. It can also be used to highlight key objects being searched for, or enemies that are undercover. Multiplayer returned in Revelations, but unfortunately yet again I was unable to play it due to the servers being shut down in January of this year. Even more gutted about it not being able to play this one, partly due to how fun it was, as well as the memory I had before it was even released. In September 2011, the UK retailer Game held a convention in Birmingham called Game Fest. I was lucky enough to get a ticket for my younger brother and I, and it was my first and only game convention in my life, which is why it holds a special place for me. Obviously being so close to the release of Revelations, the multiplayer was being showcased and they were allowing attendees to play a single match. Due to being a massive fan of the series at that point, I made sure that it was the first booth I visited, even if the queue was massive. My brother, who was a young teenager at the time and not as interested in Assassin's Creed, didn't have the patience to wait, so went off to play what he wanted to, and multiple times as he would brag to me later, while I was still standing in the queue. Eventually I would go to the front and the 8 of us were given the hands-on experience we were waiting for. As the match went on, I took the lead, and after some nervy final moments, I won. I couldn't remember everything I was given for winning, but the one thing that I can remember was a bright yellow record called The Sounds of San Francisco, which contained songs for the then recently released Driver San Francisco game. I never listened to it as I didn't have a record player, and my dad, who did, basically said it was going nowhere near his. Combat was mostly unchanged from the previous game in that it consisted mainly of counter and chain kills. One thing that did annoy me was that the counter and one-hit kills did look more brutal and cool, but they felt like they were so much slower for perhaps the effect of it, and I felt it just slowed down the pace of a fight at times. Slow motion also kicked in when taking out final enemies in a group, which I don't remember being in Brotherhood. The only new weapon of sorts in this game, besides the bombs that can be crafted in the lethal category, is the hook blade. Ezio was able to use the hook blade to grab enemies, throw them, and also acrobatically dodge over them if just wanted to get past them. Missions and Revelations haven't changed much from the previous game, and continue to include optional objectives to be completed which contribute to the overall sync meter. Side missions have also been greatly reduced from the previous game. I've seen a lot of people complain about Brotherhood being a bit bloated with unnecessary content, so maybe not the worst thing, but they maybe went a bit far with this, it's possibly due to the quick turnaround required in development. Besides the previously mentioned Den Defence minigame, let's not go back to the mess of that mode, the main side content is actually part of the modern day aspect of the game. When back with Desmond on Animus Island, 5 other portals can be found outside the main one that returns to Ezio. These portals consist of missions called Desmond's Journey and completely change the gameplay style, which they are completely controlled from a first person perspective and involve puzzle elements where 2 different types of shapes can be spawned to allow traversal around the levels. The story elements of Desmond's Journey have Desmond recounting memories from a young age where he has been trained in the ways of the assassins to the point where he wants to get away from it all, becomes a bartender, then kidnapped by Altair at the beginning of the first game. I'm personally not the biggest fan of this mode, as it can be pretty frustrating with the jumping mechanic being a bit stiff, and I fell more than a few times. I also feel that it just seems unnecessary, and the change to first person was a gimmick to say that something new was included. Also felt the levels were pretty boring. To be able to access the portals for Desmond's journey, one of the collectibles in the game, data fragments, needs to be collected, and the further portals only become accessible after a certain number have been collected. Apparently they can also be unlocked if the Lost Archive piece of DLC has been purchased and installed, which I'll discuss in the next section. Other collectibles that can be gathered are the usual treasure chests and memoir pages, which once collected unlock a mission which rewards the player with Pasha's armour. There was one other secret tomb I found, which was similar to the Assassin's Tomb and Romany Slayers from the previous two games, where I found Vlad Tepes' sword at the end. 3 pieces of DLC, with the first 2 focusing on multiplayer mode, introducing new playable characters and maps. The final piece of DLC was called The Lost Archive, which had single player levels with the same mechanics as Desmond's Journey, but focused on Subject 16, Clay Kazmarek. The DLC tells the story of how Clay was trying to find his purpose in life until approached by William Miles and the Assassins. He decides to join them, and his first mission is to infiltrate Abstergo to uncover what the Animus Project is. He is to be assisted by an assassin who has already been undercover inside Abstergo for some time, Lucy Stillman, who played a big part in the game series up until the end of the last game. Clay gets enrolled in the Animus Project, where he is placed in the machine for sometimes days. Through his participation, he is able to discover that the machines are being used to delve into subjects' DNA and locate Piece of Eden. He also finds out that Lucy has actually defected and joined the Templars due to them convincing her that she has been abandoned by the Assassins. Once finding out that Clay has discovered her betrayal, Lucy ensures that Clay is unable to leave or even communicate with the Assassins so he can not out her, and subjects him to even more time within the Animus. This eventually drives Clay crazy due to the bleeding effect, and knowing he doesn't have much choice, he plans to remove himself from the situation. Before he does this though, he is able to use the long sessions of the Animus to hack the system and leave a remnant of himself that he is able to assist the next target for the Animus Project, Desmond Miles. This is how glitches appear in the previous games, and Clay was able to show himself to Desmond within the Black Room. Once finishing the final memory of the DLC, it looks back to the beginning and just keeps doing so until all memory fragments are found scattered throughout. Once this is done, a final memory is unlocked where Clay is able to send an email to his father, who can be heard throughout the memories to let him know that he is okay and serving a higher purpose. Similar to the memories presented throughout the Desmond Journey side missions, I wasn't really a fan of this DLC due to how annoying it can be. I will say, however, that I felt they did more interesting things in terms of level design, which fed into the story elements I was trying to tell. I would have preferred more normal gameplay missions to be added in the DLC. So, does Assassin's Creed Revelations hold up in 2024? I'd say yes, but it's a difficult one to completely get behind. I find I'm torn between heart and head in this one. As a big fan of Assassin's Creed series, and Ezio in particular as I previously stated, I would always suggest playing all games. One of the major negatives that didn't help Revelations is that it didn't evolve much from the previous games, and this fed into the fatigue that gamers were starting to feel with the franchise and its 4 games in 5 years. The things that were added in the Den Defense minigame and first person memories for both Desmond and Clay in the DLC didn't help either, as they weren't widely loved by the majority of players. I also feel that, while Revelations didn't look bad and there was nice change being a different setting like Constantinople, it felt like it little downgraded from Brotherhood, and this wasn't helped by the fact that Desmond and Ezio looked different, which provided some uncanny valley vibes. The positives I have for the game will probably come from an emotional standpoint. As weak as I felt the story was, compared especially to the previous 2 entries, it was a nice conclusion to Ezio's story, and the added continuation of Altair's story was a nice addition that I think paid off if you'd played all the games up until that point, and I wish they would revisit some of these old Assassin's games in the future. So I suppose overall, I would say yes, I would recommend playing Assassin's Creed Revelations in 2024, only if it's to round off one of the best character arcs in the series. As suggested to the other 2, again for ease and ensure a full updated experience, I'd probably suggest playing it as part of the Ezio collection, which will also be more easily accessible. Thank you as always for watching the video, and I want to send a special thank you to anyone who watched or interacted with any of my content up until this point. I'm still learning and finding my way, but glad people seem to be enjoying it. It would be greatly appreciated if you'd give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, as well as leave a comment below on any improvements I can make, any things you may want to see in the channel, or even any memories you have of AC Revelations. See you in the next video.